to my channel, or if you're new here, welcome. My name is Urvi and I live in New York City, and I make a lot of different videos about my life in New York City, so definitely feel free to look around and stick around if you like my channel. Now with today's video, I want to start a really exciting, fun new series. Basically a series about what your money can get you if you're renting in New York City. I got this idea from Refinery 29's Sweet Digs videos. I absolutely am obsessed with those videos. I've watched every single one of them probably more than once, and I love watching just like content about renting in New York City. Last year a lot of people left New York City because of the pandemic, and because of that the real estate in New York City has taken a hit, and so the rents are actually slightly lower than they would be. But I have seen that real estate has started picking back up again. I keep looking on Street Easy all the time just because I am really interested in New York City real estate, and so I thought this would be a really great new series to start on my channel. Today's video is basically going to be what you can get for $1,500 to $3,000 in Manhattan. And with this series, I do want to cover different parts of New York City, not just Manhattan, but for this video in particular, I chose the Chelsea and East Village, Lower East Side. I will talk a little bit about these areas as we get into the video, but I did pick the $1,500 to $3,000 price range because that's what I'm seeing right now for studios and one bed. Now before I start, I do want to give some disclaimers. I have seen so many videos about renting in New York City, and there's always people commenting about how high the rent here is, and believe me, everyone that lives in New York knows that they can find much cheaper and much more spacious apartments if they were to live elsewhere and not in New York City, but they do it anyway. It is always possible to get cheaper rents in New York City, especially if you don't live in Manhattan, but just for the sake of this video, I stuck to this price range. Now, while seeing these apartments, I took all the precautions just to stay safe from the virus, and also that I did not book any appointment with the brokers. I only attended open houses where the house is basically left open for you to go see between like 1 or 2 hours, just because I didn't want to waste someone's time, because I'm not renting right away. I will be in a couple months, but not right away. And lastly, whatever apartment I did see in person, I asked the broker if I could record it. So yeah, with that, let's just get started. I want to start off with the apartments that I saw in East Village. East Village is the downtown part of Manhattan, and it's arguably the most fun part of Manhattan, I would say, because it has so many restaurants, it has so many bars, it has a very young population of people. There's street art, and despite all of these things, it does have really nice tree-lined, quiet streets with pre-war buildings. So East Village has a lot of older pre-war buildings compared to the high-rise luxury kind of apartments, and for that reason is also slightly more affordable. Starting with the least expensive, the first apartment I saw was a studio located on East 10th Street, which is prime East Village, and the rent was $1,850 a month gross and about $1,700 net. If you don't really know what gross and net rent is, it just means that they offer you a couple of months or a couple of days free on your lease, which can be anywhere between 12 to 24 months. And after deducting those free days, you end up with an amount which is your net rent. So on this particular studio, they were offering a month free on a 12-month lease. And how this works is you pay the gross rent, which is $1,850 for your security deposit and your first month as rent, and then onwards you pay $1,700, which is your net rent. This apartment was in a building that had laundry, and this apartment also had a dishwasher, but just for the sake of this video, I want to mention that I did only look at apartments that had these two amenities, just because it's easier to do laundry when it's at least in the building, and it's super annoying, especially when it's not close to where you live. Now back to the studio. As soon as I walked in, I got a really sad feeling from this place, and I believe that it's important to pay attention to how you feel when you walk into a space, especially if you're going to be living there for like a whole year or more. So from this apartment, I really did not get like good vibrations for some reason, and it was just not my cup of tea, because first off, it was pretty old, it was not updated, there was some construction or cleaning work going on, especially in the bathroom, and there was like very old fittings everywhere, like this old wood. It also didn't have the best closet space. When I opened the closet door, it was kind of old looking, and it had like weights and gym equipment in there, which I didn't understand why. It just looked like it hadn't been cleaned. So I was not a fan of this apartment. For the pros of this apartment, I did think that it was on the cheaper side. $1,700 for a studio in Prime East Village is a pretty good rent. It did have a laundry in building, which is very convenient, and it also had a dishwasher. It also had a decent sized kitchen and a kitchen island, which I really like. That's about it for the pros of this apartment. In terms of cons, I thought that it was kind of low on storage space. It was also old and not updated. It had older fittings and appliances, and also I wasn't very impressed with the lighting in here. It was kind of dark when the lights were turned off, which is okay in the summer, but during winter when it gets so dark and gloomy in New York, you don't want that because it can be a little depressing. I just didn't feel good walking in here, which I think is a pretty strong indicator of how you're gonna feel when you live in the apartment. So this one wasn't it for me. The next apartment that I saw was listed as a 1-bed 1-bath in, again, Prime East Village, but when I went there to see this apartment, it looked more like a studio to me because there was actually no like physical door or separation between the living area and the bedroom. So I consider this as a makeshift 1-bed 1-bath apartment. The rent for this apartment was $22.50 gross, and they had 1.5 months free, and the net rent was coming up to about $1,970, so closer to $2,000. A lot of New York City apartments are now giving a couple of months free with the lease because of the pandemic, and that's what's caused the rents to actually go down. So I did think that for the area, again, a $2,000 1-bed 1-bath was a very good deal. This apartment was located on East 9th Street, which again is Prime East Village, and it was also just 1 or 2 blocks away from Tompkins Square Park, so that was pretty good. When I walked in here, it seemed really bright and nice, but then I walked into the kitchen and it was kind of a very weird layout for me because the kitchen was so tight. I actually had to like squeeze in there to get inside, and there was barely any walking space, and the bathroom as well was really tiny. There was no walking space between like the bathtub and getting out of there. The bathroom was still manageable, but the kitchen, I personally do cook, and so I would never be able to like squeeze everything in here, and it would just be frustrating to kind of just squeeze in and out of the kitchen. I did think that the living area was nice and spacious, and the bedroom was slightly smaller, but it would still fit up to a queen bed. There were also 2 half closets on either side of the bedroom, which is not great storage space, but it isn't super little either. Pros of this apartment, I thought that it had really good natural light, it had newer appliances, it was just cleaner, also was located in a laundry building. And the cons of this apartment, although it was listed as a 1-bed, there was no actual door to separate the bedroom and the living area. The kitchen and the bathroom was like super tight, and this was also a 5th floor walk up, which up to a 3rd floor or even a 4th floor is fine, but I think if it's a 5th floor it becomes a little bit annoying over time. But if you don't mind the exercise, then it's probably good for you. The next apartment I saw was a 1-bed 1-bath on the Lower East Side. Lower East Side is closer to the Chinatown area as compared to the actual East Village area, but it's still pretty close. It's about 15 or 20 minutes from Prime East Village. The rent was $22.95, but they said they were willing to negotiate and go up to $2,200, which I thought was a good rent. This apartment was located on like the main street, which I thought could get noisy if there was a lot of traffic or cars going up and down. But that said, I think this was my favorite apartment out of all the apartments that I saw because it was just like really nice. You will see why. It was located in a luxury building where you entered. It had like a waterfall, it had an elevator, it had a gym, it also had like a private outdoor space for all the residents of the building. This apartment was super spacious. It was a true 1-bed 1-bath, and the living area was, I think, a very good size, and as you can see, the lighting in here was beautiful. There was tons of natural light. It was also on like a higher floor, so it wasn't obstructed by like buildings on either side or anything like that. It had a huge window in the living area as well as the bedroom, which looked directly onto the street. And also I love that this had at least 3 closets, out of which one was a huge walk-in closet. It is just really a rare thing to have a walk-in closet in New York City. Another thing I loved about this apartment was the kitchen. It was such a good size and there was a huge island. It was part of like an open layout and it looked into the living room, and there was again a lot of lighting from that window in the living room, which was just making this apartment seem really bright and like a happy space. And it was also super spacious for 1 bed 1 bath, priced at $2,200 in New York City. Only thing that I did find a little bit of a con was I'm not very fond of the Lower East Side area. Moving on to the next neighborhood, which is Chelsea. Chelsea is a very popular neighborhood in Manhattan. It is one of the more safer, cleaner neighborhoods in Manhattan, which is why it is also slightly more expensive compared to, say, East Village. Chelsea tends to have a lot more luxury apartments and a lot more coffee shops and little boutique stores. There's again a lot of young professionals that live in the area, people that work in Midtown, people that need to easily commute to Midtown. The High Line, which is a very famous tourist spot or like a walking park, is also located in Chelsea, and all the apartments that I saw were around here, which also adds to the cost of living over here in this area. And again, there's a lot of really good restaurants in this area as well. The first apartment that I saw in Chelsea was a studio located on West 25th Street. The rent for the studio was $24.95 and there was no gross or net, so that is what you'd be paying, which is slightly higher again for a studio apartment. This apartment was located in a luxury building. Again, it had a virtual doorman, you needed a code to get in, and there was an elevator, there was a gym, and there was also a rooftop deck that I didn't get to see because this was an open house and there was no like broker or anything. This particular house was located on the 16th floor, which was really great. The natural lighting was really good. There were 2 closets in this apartment. There was 1 smaller closet and 1 mid-sized closet, which I didn't think again was a lot of storage space, but if you're just one person living in a studio, this should be enough for you. My favorite part about this apartment was the huge windows in the living room. It was almost floor to ceiling windows on 2 walls in the living space, and because you were at a high floor, the lighting was great, like I said, and the view was very New York. You looked out onto like the prime Chelsea area and all the high-rise buildings. I also liked that this apartment had all new fittings in terms of like the kitchen area. It had new appliances, and so it just felt very like upscale and luxury. The only con I could think about for this one was that $24.95, almost $2,500, is really expensive for a studio, especially at this time when you can find for cheaper than that a 1-bedroom apartment. So I just thought that the cost was a little bit too much. But again, Chelsea is kind of expensive, so you're basically like paying for the area. The next apartment was also a studio located on West 22nd Street. This apartment I did not go see in person, but I got a video off of Street Easy. The rent for the studio was $2,300 gross, and they were offering about 1.5 months free, so it comes up to about $2,100 net on a 13-month lease, which I thought was decent, again given the area, and also that this was again a luxury building. It had part-time doorman, elevator, and it didn't have a gym or a roof deck, but it did have an elevator and a laundry in building. The natural lighting in this apartment was again really great. I like that the kitchen still has an island even though it's a studio, and it does look like it had all new appliances in the kitchen, which is super nice. It did have 3 narrow closets, which I didn't think was a lot of storage space. The bathroom in this apartment looked really nice and new with all the modern fittings that made it seem very luxurious. And the living space itself was also really nice, again because it was bright, and there was also a decorative fireplace. This was not a working fireplace, but it was just like nice to add a rustic feel to your New York City apartment. The biggest pro for this apartment that you don't really see in a lot of New York City apartments at all was that it had a private outdoor space. It had a little balcony, which was a good size. You could actually fit like a outdoor table set out there. The cons for this apartment, I thought that the living space was kind of narrow, so it would limit the amount of furniture you could fit in here, and would also like close up the space if you tried to fit in too much furniture. I also thought that the storage was kind of less because it had very narrow closets, and also that the rent was slightly higher. This next apartment was actually a 2-bed 1-bath in Chelsea, and the rent on Street Easy was listed as $2,995, but when I contacted the real estate agent, he said that the gross rent was actually $3,995, and they were offering up a couple months free, which was why the net would come up to $2,995. I still decided to include it in here because I didn't actually go in person and see this apartment. I did get a video from the real estate agent. I did think that for a 2-bed apartment, $2,995 was affordable because you could get a roommate and share it. But when your lease ends, and if you decide to extend your lease and want to stay another year or so, then you would have to pay the gross rent, which was $3,995, which is almost $4,000, which I thought again was super expensive. This apartment looked like it had again a nice new kitchen fitted with modern appliances, and in the living room towards the left was a small, like an outdoor private space, which is not too big to fit any like furniture or anything, but it's still nice to have. The only thing that I was skeptical about was that this apartment was kind of surrounded by walls or other buildings and looked like it was at the back of the building, which is why the natural lighting didn't seem good in here. It seemed kind of dark, and when you looked out the window you would just see like random brick walls. I also thought that the bathroom was kind of small. It didn't have a bathtub or anything, it was just a standing shower. This was a first room which looked like it could fit a full to a queen bed, but if you put a queen bed I think the space would be pretty tight. And like I said, the window was overlooking I think the back wall of the building or something, which is why this seemed pretty dark to me. The closet in this room was a decent size. Master bedroom in this house seemed nice because it was the only place where the windows were actually facing the street and the only place where some kind of light could come in there. So this room was bright, and it also had brick walls throughout this apartment, which I thought is such a nice feature. I really like having brick walls. It just adds so much character to an apartment. So throughout the entire apartment it only looked like it had one closet, which I thought was strange for a 2-bedroom apartment to only have one closet. A big pro for me in this apartment was the brick wall because I just love when apartments have that. I think it adds so much character. This apartment looked like it had really nice hardwood floors, which is always good. It was also located in a building with laundry and a doorman. The cons for this apartment, I thought the rent was extremely high, especially when you look at the gross rent. Also because this apartment wasn't really that spacious. It didn't really have that many storage options. It also didn't have any kind of natural light in the bathroom, in the kitchen, or in the other room. So personally, this apartment wasn't it for me. And with that, we've reached the end of this video. I hope you liked touring all of these New York City apartments with me. If you did enjoy this video, please don't forget to give it a thumbs up and also subscribe to my channel because I do plan to make a lot more of these. Also, please feel free to let me know in the comments below if there's any specific area you want me to cover or any specific price range in terms of rent that you want me to cover. I would love to do that. And thank you so much for watching. I will see you in my next one. Bye!